Demonstration last night, a demonstration to demand democracy and to demand a people's agenda no matter who wins the election.
Listen!
We held this important demonstration to give people that opportunity to express their views. And instead of getting that opportunity to express our views, instead people were hemmed up and blocked off and kettled and held for
Thank you so much for joining us. We are broadcasting live right now from Minnesota. We are in front of the governor's mansion where a press conference has been called by different community organizations. Many of them were a part of a protest that ended very terribly last night. If you were tuned in last night, you probably saw about 600-700 protesters were stranded on a freeway for about 6 hours, all because of the authorities' response to protests here in Minnesota over the last about month. What we've seen through our Unicorn Riot coverage is since the release of Derek Chauvin, since he bailed out of jail, community continuing to protest, and standing up for their First Amendment right. They're met with multiple state agencies coordinating a very intense response to quell their protests. We've seen dozens of individuals arrested, and so last night that's what we thought was going to happen, but there just were too many individuals on the freeway last night. We saw the Minnesota State Patrol, conservation officers, and MPD all respond to a protest that had been planned and coordinated across 20 different organizations here in Minnesota. And so for 5 hours, a lot of the community leaders, attorneys, organizers, advocates were all stuck on the highway waiting for police to decide whether or not they were going to arrest people or let them go. And so today we're seeing a lot of those organizations hold a press conference in standing against the intimidation tactics of the police and state agencies, and to make a statement to our Governor Walz, and really asking him to allow people to exercise their First Amendment right. And so we're going to go ahead and tune in here to this press conference that's happening now.
We were able to dance. And I just want to remind people the reason why we were out there last night, because we did, in fact, actually schedule this a month in advance, because no matter who we were going to protest, no matter who won, we were going to protest. So I just want to remind everyone, this is why we did it. In a state where we have a blue governor and a blue mayor and a blue city council member, and we were doing a peaceful protest, they still blocked us on the highway. And then they're going to say that the reason why they did it was to make sure that we stopped doing a disturbance on the highway. And then they kept us there for 5 hours. That's not what this is about. What this was about was they were trying to send a message, not to just the people in the metro area, but to everyone around the world, that this is not going to be tolerated, that this is not what they're going to do, that we're not going to be allowed to protest. And they were going to make they were going to make us an example. And we said, no, we're going to show people what to do in these situations. And that's why we stayed nonviolent. That's why we stayed dancing and making sure we were doing a protest and we're having fun, because they're not going to break our spirit. You know, there was a lot of black and brown people on the highway, and let me tell you, us black people, we were in slavery for over 400 years, okay? It's going to take being on the highway for 5 hours, it's going to take a little bit more than that, okay, to break our spirits. Right. So I just want to remind everyone, while the election is getting close, and it is still very close on who's going to win, at the end of the day, someone who ideal of systemic change is shooting people in the leg instead of the head, that's not a real choice for people of color. People actually said that black men didn't vote in the numbers that they expected for Joe Biden. And they actually attribute this and said, well, maybe it's because a lot of African-American males are sexist. And and that's just complete bullshit. We didn't have a choice. When you have a choice of someone that is systemically racist and not just complicit with it, but helping prop it up with things like the 3-strike rules, and working with segregationists, and you have someone who's a blatant racist who's going around doing things like the Muslim lands and calling places in Africa shithole countries. That's not a real decision for us. So I want to end this off by saying, everyone's so proud that we live in this state, that it's the blue wall. Biden won. We've been blue since 1970, whatever. I don't care. What has that done? We still have some of the highest disparity rate between black and whites in the country. So remember, it doesn't matter if they're blue, red, gray, purple. Like, what matters is what they're saying. What matters is their message. And what are you going to do for me? You know, as Janet Jackson said, what have you done for me lately? Okay? And let me tell you, when it comes to the Democratic Party, that ain't shit.
All right, DJ. So I'm Jess Sundin. I work with DJ at the Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar. This is one of the biggest press conferences I've ever been at. Who was out there on the highway with me last night? Yeah. This is like a tiny portion of the people that were out there. 646 people were ticketed. You know, I lived in Minnesota during the Republican National Convention, and I thought there was a lot of arrests then. This is the biggest single night of arrests that I've seen. And what we had was a shameful display of recklessness by the police with regard in particular to our children. That's what I wanted to speak to. I was out there as a mother with my daughter who's 16 and her other mom. And you know, it's part of our family values. We believe in standing up for what's right. We believe in justice. We think Trump has got to be defeated, and that, like DJ said, that ain't enough. Yeah. And so we went out there together as a family to stand up for what's right. When it was clear that the police were not going to let anyone leave the demonstration without being arrested, my partner and our daughter left together. And then what happened? As soon as they were arrested, they were both handcuffed with those zip ties, and then they were separated. So we've got Democrats in this state ordering their police to separate families, not in the border far away in Mexico, but right here in Minneapolis on the highway.
That's not right.
My 16-year-old daughter was dropped off around 10 o'clock at night. It's dark out. It's actually past curfew. She got a violation for violating curfew. She wasn't an unaccompanied minor until she was taken away from the custody of her mother. She and other teens, most of them with their phones dead, were dropped off there on the West Bank, unaccompanied by any adults. Apparently, it's the policy of these arresting officers to separate minors from adults. I don't know what kind of policy that is, but the idea that you're not only going to separate children from their parents, but then you're not going to take responsibility for ensuring that they're safe is shameful. But you know what? Fuck it. Excuse me, I know we're on TV. You know what? There were so many young people out there with us. I'm a mom, so I went around and talked to a mom, like, let me get your name, let me get your mama's digits. We're going to make sure that you don't get lost out here. We don't know where they're going to take you, but we're going to find you. And I know that we did that. We got all those young people home, but not because the police made it happen, not because Walz or Harrington or Fry or anyone else made it happen, because community made it happen. The fact is, yesterday was a testament to what community can do and what it means to talk about power to the people. Not only do we have a whole people's agenda, a whole bunch of things we need and we're fighting for. We got this whole pandemic and we can't even get health care. We've got an economy that's the worst we've ever seen, and there's no jobs and no resources for housing. Yet somehow there's endless resources for police to abuse, harass, violate, and sometimes murder our own community members. This has to stop. When we were out there on that highway, we didn't quite know how that was going to go because we weren't the ones in charge. We weren't the ones carrying the batons. We weren't the ones carrying the rifles, the tear gas, the mace, whatever else. We didn't have a tank, okay? But the fact is, nobody wavered. We stood together. When you got 700 people on a highway, ain't no tank gonna stop us. Ain't no pig's gonna stop us. The fact is, the thing that happened over and over during that demonstration was people coming up to organizers and saying, how can I get involved? Then that's been happening all day. People have been popping in our socials. When's the next march? Governor Walz, Chief Harrington, all the rest of y'all, you haven't slowed us down one bit. Ain't no power to power the people, because the power of the people don't stop.
Ain't no power to power the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Ain't no power to power the people, because the power of the people don't stop.
Our next speaker will be Jailani Hussein with CARE Minnesota.
I want to first of all greet all of you with a greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and blessings be upon you all today. I want to echo something very important. And that is, last night, we saw something in this state that should not be happening in the United States of America. We saw last night peaceful protesters denied their rights to be peacefully and protesting. Something that we see on TV in third world countries and under authoritarian regimes is what we saw here
As you can see,
in
there
Minneapolis
are some folks
last night.
here representing Trump.
What we also saw last
at
night
a press conference
that we keep seeing now, this
in
is the
Minnesota
second
in front of
time,
the governor's mansion.
is that we have a new bridge in America that continues to be a landmark similar to the Edmund Bridge in Selma. 35W protesters who marched on 35W were faced with a semi that nearly killed people. And last night, 35W Bridge became another Selma in America, where peaceful protesters were not met with batons, but they were met with the abuse of power and policy. But one thing that I know for sure, as you can see all of these protesters here today, and the many countless people who are watching, is that every single time you think that the death of George Floyd was a blip in history, I want you to be reminded it's not. And last night was a great testament of that. We are not stopping protesting until justice is served and is flowing from the Mississippi River here in Minnesota all the way down to the Delta. We are not going to stop protesting if we have a cold day in Minnesota. We are not stop protesting if we are incarcerated, because the reality is incarceration has always been part and parcel of the history of abuse and efforts to suppress people's voices. There is a movement happening in this country, and many, many people are now tired of waiting for justice. We are taking it into our own hands. We are taking it to the streets. And we want to thank the law enforcement last night, because what they did is they galvanized the entire state and all the activists. And I'm among one of those people who wasn't part of the protest last night, but I'm going to tell you, I feel like I missed a day in Minnesota. And there are many countless people who did not show up last night, who feel frustrated, but I want to let you know, this is the time. This is the time. And while we pass November 3rd, we have to realize that this movement has never been about this election. It's about holding people in power to check. And that starts on November 4th, which we did, and it's going to continue from this day on until we get the justice, until we get to understand the reality that the people have the power, not the politicians and not the money behind the politicians. It's always been the people. So I echo everyone's statement here today, and I want to reiterate the most important point. Drop these charges today. Because if you don't drop these charges, They're a badge of honor for many people who were charged last night. They're a badge of honor for many of those folks. But if you drop these charges, you'll realize that the voices of these people, you've heard them today. So if you're wondering, are we going to stop? No. If you're wondering if that was a fluke, no. And if you're wondering that 600 people are going to be arrested, well, they're going to have to arrest a lot of us. Thousands of us across the state. They're going to have to arrest a lot of us because we're just getting started. We're just getting mobilized, and we are going to continue demand for justice. And I want you to know, history repeats. History repeats. And what we saw last night was another history repeating. Because those brave people who marched nearly 60 years ago in Selma, they marched for dignity. And they were faced with the brutality of law enforcement, which was ordered by politicians. And last night we saw the same exact thing. Policies being abused by politicians to suppress the people's voice. But I'm telling you, the death of George Floyd has made us all bleed a little harder, think a little harder, march a little harder, vote a little harder, and make a lot of trouble in Minnesota, good trouble, a little harder. So don't do what you did last night, because it only makes us think a little sweeter about why we're doing it and why we're out there. So to all of the folks who are at home today, I want you to know last night's traffic was not caused by these peaceful protesters. It was caused by law enforcement aiming to turn each other against each other. Last night's traffic, last night many of your neighbors were disorganized. As you heard, children were part of this protest. Families were part of this protest, and they were kept for 5 hours and longer away from their families. People who needed medicine, people who needed to be taken care of, people who couldn't stand that long and couldn't be out that long. What does that tell you? That is the type of form of brutality that we're facing today. And it stops here with the governor's house as we're standing in front of the governor's mansion right now. We demand the governor to drop all the charges, and we demand the governor to respect the constitutional right of people in this country and in this state, which is a right to protest and assembly. And that has been a right that has been every single time civil rights movements have happened in this country. They've always tried to silence the protesters, whether it was in the 60s and much, much later, even now. But we're not stopping anywhere. We are going to continue to fight. And trust me, Minnesota, you will remember on November 4th, because you've galvanized more people into this movement.
Thank you, Jaylani. And here's a fact of life. There ain't enough jails, and you can't build enough jails to hold us back. And that's a fact of life. Up next, we have Nakima Levy-Armstrong with Racial Justice Network.
First off, I want to give it up to all the protesters, all the marshals, all the medics, all the journalists, all the allies who stood in solidarity with us last night, who refused to be intimidated by an excessive show of force at the hands of the state troopers. Also, Minneapolis Police Department was there, as well as the Hennepin County Sheriff's deputies. It was absolutely absurd to have hundreds of law enforcement officers out on the freeway when we were steps away from the exit. As a matter of fact, as we were attempting to exit the freeway, the people who were in the front line of cars saw state troopers run across the freeway and deliberately block the exit. So this was an intentional act on the part of Governor Walz, Chief Harrington, and all the other shot callers behind the scenes who were trying to teach protesters a lesson. Not only did they entrap us on the freeway for 5 hours, but beyond that, they did not give an order to disperse. They did not give us an opportunity to leave. They did not give parents who had their children out there an opportunity to leave. They didn't give young people an opportunity to leave. Those who were elders, those who had disabilities, or those who had health issues, who knew that it was going to be a short march trying to exit the freeway. That's unconscionable. It's unacceptable. It was a violation of our First Amendment rights to freedom of speech. And for us to live in a state that claims to be progressive, they ought to know better. It is absolutely ridiculous to treat nonviolent, peaceful protesters in the way that we were treated. We were on the phone, several of us, talking to elected officials from Minneapolis, from St. Paul, from Hennepin County, the legislators, and hardly any of them could get Governor Walz on the phone to give a decent response to what was happening. And it took hours for them to get Chief Harrington on the phone. And when they did get him on the phone, he claimed that he was going to release the protesters, which never happened without us having to all give up our licenses. Some people were photographed on the freeway and their mugshots were taken. Some people were placed in vehicles and driven away from the scene and dropped off in random places, and they would not communicate with us. As a matter of fact, when we first walked up and we saw the state troopers blocking the exit, I personally walked up along with Monique College-Doty and other activists, and we asked the state troopers, who is in command? Who can we talk to about negotiating an exit off the freeway? And the officers stood there looking stone-faced like human G.I. Joes, fully armed with sticks and everything else that they had at their disposal. And they would not even give us a response, as if we were not human. As taxpayers in the state of Minnesota, as those who elect our elected officials, we have the right to a response when we approach law enforcement and when we approach elected officials seeking answers. Of course, all of us, many of us, want Trump out of the White House ASAP, but we also cannot have Democrats acting in a similar manner and then expecting our votes. We are a government that is for the people and by the people, and we refuse to accept anything less than that. How can protesters be attacked in the way that we were, but killer cops are allowed to remain on these police forces throughout the state of Minnesota? We have rarely seen Governor Walz or any of our other elected officials step up and demand accountability for cops who kill people, for cops who abuse people, for cops who criminalize people, for cops who harass people. They look the other way. But when it comes to those of us who are holding up a new standard, we are the ones who are targeted and harassed and treated like criminals. This has to stop now. So we are asking the elected officials who claim to be allies, some who were just elected, some who have been in office for too damn long, to step up and take responsibility and demand best practices and safety protocols for protesters, because this didn't stop anything. Next time we will come out with even more people. So that's what they need to understand. And if you were sitting at home watching and you're healthy, beyond what you write on social media, come out there and stand in solidarity with us. It's going to take all of us to transform a system that has been far too abusive to far too many people, and especially the most vulnerable. Governor Walz, we demand an apology. Chief Harrington, we demand an apology. All the elected officials who participated in this spectacle and denial of our rights, we demand an apology, and that all of our charges be dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think it's really important to emphasize what Nikema talked about. The fact that there was never an order for dispersal makes it an unlawful, imprisonment, a false imprisonment by law enforcement. This is disgusting. It's like conduct we're not going to tolerate.
Here, there are
and we're already talking
people
about
who represent Trump,
so this is not going to
who have
tell you that. And next
press
we're going to hear from
conference
Raisha Williams
and,
with Guns Down, Love Up.
My fault.
Yeah, as you can see, there are some individuals who have come here to this press conference representing Trump.
Minnesota deserves
Obviously,
the name
people are here gathering
Jim Crow
to
in the
demand
North.
that the charges be dropped.
This is why
and
Minnesota
so we're
has
not sure
earned the
why
name
individuals
Minnesota
who represent
nice.
Trump are here today, but we
Not
will
for the
make a point to try to talk
niceness
to
of
them
Minnesota, but for the
once the
nasty
press conference wraps
niceness
up.
of Minnesota. Just 2 years ago, we elected a governor, a Democratic governor, who stood on the platform of justice and equality for all. And here last night, he acted as if he was Trump's running mate. In fact, Governor Walz is more disgusting than Trump to me, because at least we know what side Trump really lies on. But here we have a two-faced governor. One face acts as if he really is about the people who voted him to the office, and the other face who only cares about politics. Politics that continue business as usual. Business that continues to incarcerate black men, brown men. Businesses that continue to separate brown families from one another. 300 children still have not been replaced with their family. Business as usual that continues to turn a blind eye to the deaths of so many black men and women in this country. Governor Walz, you are a coward. You are a disgusting, scared little boy who is acting like he's a man about man business. But what you really are is somebody who needs to be ousted. And last night, you showed us everything we need to know. We will not forget come election year. We will not forget your inhumanity. We will not forget the disgusting behavior and the cowardly act that you displayed. Many, many people called you last night. Okay? State Rep Patricia Torres, is she a senator or rep? Senator Patricia Torres, God bless her. God bless her. She stood on the phone with us until she knew we were safe. And even though Jeremiah Ellison, City Council Ward 5, and I do not always see eye to eye, he stood with us yesterday when Jacob Mayor Fry hid like the little cowardly boy he was. When we called Chief Arredondo and Mayor Fry and said, pull your boys in blue off of us, we got silence. Silence. Two people who say they care about black lives. It's too easy to say Black Lives Matter, but not act on how you believe Black Lives Matter. So today we demand that you drop all the charges, that you issue an apology to us in our face, not on camera, and that you sit down with the very leaders you say you want to work with to start creating real change. Because what do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. If we don't get it, if we don't get it, if we don't get it, and we'll continue to shut shit down because we ain't scared.
And now we'll hear from Eliza Darris with the Minnesota chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union. Eliza? Where'd you go? Uh-oh.
Dealing with multiple things. Greetings, everybody who came out. I am going to read a short statement by the ACLU, and then I'm going to say a few words myself. So this is a statement by the ACLU based off of the events that occurred last night on the highway.
who have
Kettling
decided
peaceful
to come
protesters and not
surround
giving them an order to
this
disperse
press
or
conference
unnecessary police
to address what
escalations.
happened yesterday.
So it's
in
shutting down an
Minneapolis.
entire highway for
We're
several
not
hours
fully
to
sure
detain
why
peaceful
Trump
protesters
supporters are here,
who have
but
indicated
we do
they
plan
want
to
to
talk
leave
to them
instead of
once the press
simply letting them
conference is
go.
done.
This heightened police response shut down the highway for several more hours last night. We urge law enforcement to take calm and proportional response and to respect the right to protest.
Yeah.
That's end statement. Now this is my statement.
Listen.
So my name is Elijah Darris. I'm an organizer with the ACLU of Minnesota. I coordinate the Smart Justice campaign. I was watching Nakima Livy Armstrong's Facebook Live as a phenomenal organizer, protester, leader within our community. I became immediately concerned by what I saw on her live stream. So I immediately got in my car without second thought, and I got onto the streets, and I came to the location where they had everyone corralled. And what I saw deeply disturbed me. I saw a number of officers at the perimeter off of the highway engaging and interacting with people around the protest in ways that was purely escalating. And so I had to intervene several times and ask some of the commanding officers if they could speak with some of the lesser ranking officers and have them calm down and have them not engage and have them be calm and have them be respectful. And I just found myself really blown away by the fact that, here I don't have law enforcement training, and yet to me, what I was seeing is quite obvious that there was a need for someone to step in and to de-escalate. And so I found myself in a very awkward and odd position in which I was de-escalating the police officers who were actually escalating force for no reason. We had college kids. These were college kids on the outside perimeters. I'm not talking about the highway. These were young college kids. They were saying what we would expect college kids to say. They were upset and they were expressing themselves. My expectation in a scenario like that is for the officers to remain calm. It's for the officers to remain level-headed. It's for the officers to remain peaceful. Right? They're called peace officers, right? I mean, am I correct? Are they called peace officers? Right? And so my expectation is for them to live up to that title. And so that's not what I saw. And what I saw deeply disturbed me, right? I saw young children, these were 17 and 18-year-olds, staring down the barrels of rifles. And I had to ask the officer, why are you pointing the rifle at this is a young man, he's saying some stuff. He's saying words. This is a rifle. These are words. That is a rifle. Why do I have to escalate down force in that scenario? This is what we need. We need officers to be level-headed. We need police officers within our community to recognize this is community. Just because you had an initial way of thinking, that doesn't mean you got to stay with that thinking. And yet, so they kept them on the highway with an initial plan. The initial plan was going to be to lock up everybody and to detain them and to give everybody tickets and to put people on buses 40 at a time and to send them into the far-flung regions of South Minneapolis and nearly close to St. Paul. And we said to them, that don't make no sense. That's literally going to keep everybody out here into 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning with no food, no water, no way of using the restroom. We said that doesn't make any sense. Just because you had an initial way of thinking, what we're telling you is to put humanity into your law enforcement. What we're telling you is to put humanity into your law enforcement. Don't group think, don't stay there. Recognize the humanity of the people in front of you. Say to yourself, okay, is this the proper course? Is this a logical course? Is this a humane course? And if you are finding yourself saying no, 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 then adjust. change up.
You see one of the
And we were running into wall after wall after wall.
Revved up his motorcycle and it
Of
appears
not
as though
being
he's
able to
trying
have the
leave.
tactics changed up. And we were saying there's children down there. People were saying they have to use the restroom down there.
Minnesota, a response to
People were staring down the barrels
treatment of
of multiple
protesters
rifles
last night.
down there. It was cold down there. People literally asked, can we just leave? And they were told what? They were told what? They were told what? They just wanted to leave. So let them leave. I tell y'all, I watched, I pulled up, and the exit was right here. And the people were right there. And I'm talking to the commander, and I'm like, Commander, the exit's right here. Let them walk up the ramp.
Let my people go.
And it took so long, so many discussions, so many loop backs around to arrive at the conclusion, but the people were suffering in the meantime. Well, we could have just made the instantaneous adjustment, the humane adjustment. What we are asking for is to police us the way you'll police your brother, the way you'll police your sister, the way you want your nieces and nephews policed in Edina, right? Where else? Where's some of them far-flung suburbs? I don't even know. Minnetonka. Give me some more. Eden Prairie, Egan, right? Police us the same way. Am I asking for too much? Am I asking for too much? Am I asking for too much? Police us the way you police your own mother. That's all we're asking. So that's my statement, right? Treat us the way you want to be treated, right? Treat us how you want to be treated. And so we're going to continue to have boots on the ground. We're going to continue to galvanize and organize and make sure that the power of community is respected. I appreciate every last single one of y'all for coming out here today, right? Pounding and grounding it all out until we get to the other side and we can say it together. We're victorious.
We had 600. The question is how many people were arrested, how many were cited, how many were in custody arrest. We had 646 people cited. One person was in custody arrested.
Have charges been filed yet?
Not as of the time that I left to come here. We was a probable cause hold at that point. So, and I wanted to just raise up something. I'm going to bring up our next speaker in just a second. But Eli talked about this whole business of dropping people off all over town. Even kids by themselves were being dropped off in random locations. We had people dropped off on the U campus, downtown, down in Edina, down in Bloomington, and Lake Harriet, all over the place. But guess what people did in our community? We had 85 people in cars talking to each other by social media and circulating where to be. We had people going to every place, following the buses, picking people up and getting them where they needed to go. That was the community making us safe. That was the community coordinating to ensure people's safety, not the police. I want to make that absolutely clear. I think it's very important. And now I'd like to bring up ISIS with Minnesota Youth for Justice. Minnesota Youth for Justice.
I'm Isis with Minnesota Youth for Justice. I'm 19 and I was out on the highway last night. I just want to say thank you to all the bystanders on the other side of the highway who were filming, chanting with us, dancing with us. I'm not sure if a lot of people know this, but police ended up pepper spraying bystanders on the other side of the highway for no reason, for filming their abuse towards us. Another thing is, a couple months ago when we did the Breonna Taylor March, this did not happen. They let us off. We were on 35, I think. 94. We were on 94, and they let us off the exit. It was fine. Nobody was arrested, I think. So the next thing is, me and some of my friends were a little scared because We are well-known activists around here, and we speak out against the police. And when we were told to turn ourselves in would be the best option, we were scared. We were like, we don't know where we're going to go. We don't know what they're going to do to us. We were scared. And was a girl who was missing last night who was taken by 7 officers. I'm not sure if she was found or not. She was? She's in custody? Okay. But it was scary seeing that she was missing and nobody knew what happened to her. The last thing I want to say is I was standing with one of my friends yelling at the cops, chanting at them, and we heard one of them say, "Just shoot her," a 16-year-old girl. And so they were trying to agitate us. They were verbally abusing us, and we couldn't do anything about it. We couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't fight back against them. Yeah. The last thing I have to say is, all the black Trump supporters, you look like clowns. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Nadia Sharawi, who with Students for Democratic Society. Come on up. University of Minnesota chapter.
I'm Nadia. I organize with Students for a Democratic Society at the University of Minnesota. We held the first feeder march coming into the march last night, and we said this in the beginning of the march going into it, and I'll say it again. We are fighting for campus community control of the police because we understand that power and leadership have separated in terms of the university. We understand that leadership may be in the university official, but they don't have power if they can't organize like we do, and they don't understand the representation and the needs of the students on campus and those under jurisdiction of the UMPD, because that's what we cover as well. And we went into that march, and we went into the TCC for J March, we still stood by those values. And when we came in and they arrested and they held us intentionally because they were afraid of what we would do, because they thought that would scare us, that they'd wait it out and we'd be silent, we sat down, but we still chanted. We still educated each other. We did know your rights training on the ground. And when each of us got arrested, one by one, when our mugshots were taken, when my friend got her hair searched, an officer literally asked, do you have something that will harm me in your hair? We still educated. I said, do you know who Terrence Franklin is? With my officer. We had individual officers holding us, waiting to get us in zip ties and on the bus. And when they got us on the bus, we still chanted. We still educated one another. We passed out numbers. We did more Know Your Rights. Because that's what happens when you bring us together like that. We were building community when they were attempting to silence us. It was just too big. It was just too big. And when they left, and we were held on that bus for 40 minutes before they let us out to send us to God knows where, we connected with one another, we got numbers. We stayed connected. So Tim Walz, to anybody else, also Joan Gable, University of Minnesota president, have yet to hear from you about the students who got charged. Have yet to hear from you. And when I'm talking about the students as well, we're still organizing, and we got numbers and we got new members, and we're organizing tonight again. We have an emergency meeting to talk about where to go from here. So you just re-energized a new student movement. You just did that. And thank you. We're still talking community control of the police because that's where it's absolutely needed, because they're terribly terrified of the accountability that we have. So thank you.
UMPD was out there last night. UMPD were out there.
Yes! Hey. Awesome, and more awesome. We have with us, I'm really proud to announce or to introduce you all to Chaz, who is with Red Wing Nonviolent Protests. Those folks drove all the way up here last night. 10 of their members got arrested on the highway, and they came back again today to be part of this press conference. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Michelle. We want people to know that the problem is just not in Minneapolis. I was with people last night that were arrested from Aiken, Minnesota. They were from International Falls, Minnesota. There was people from Duluth. This is not just the urban city problem. This systematic racism is everywhere. I've been doing this since May. I've been through so much. Had a 9-inch blade pulled on me. I've been hit by a minivan. I've had an HRO put on me from protesting outside the police chief's house. I sprayed and taken off, yes, that it was fear-mongering. She lied. Now I got criminal damage to property charges for spraying Jell-O and corn syrup all over the police department and the city hall department in Red Wing, Minnesota. But yet, none of the people that are hurting the people in Red Wing have charges yet, but yet peaceful people keep on getting charges. And until we get justice and change, I will not stop peaceful disruption. And all you guys are doing is waking up Minnesota more. So all I need people, everybody, doesn't matter where you're from, if you're from Black Duck, if you're from Bemidji, Brainerd, we need y'all to shut up and help.
Those guys have been having literally non-stop protests since George Floyd was killed and even before, like week in and week out. They are really a great group. So now we have with us Shireen, who represents AFSCME 3800.
Thank you. As she said, my name is Shireen Horzak. I'm the president of AFSCME Local 3800, the Clerical Workers Union at the University of Minnesota. And last night, along with other union presidents, along with dozens of union members, I was arrested with the 645 others on the freeway last night. And it has done nothing except motivate us to keep being out there in the fight for justice and to stand up. AFSCME 3800 was part of a labor contingent organized by Minnesota Workers United. We were at the protest for a number of reasons. First, we were there to demand that every vote be counted, because this is a country which has historic disenfranchisement. We know that communities of Black and brown folks, communities of poor white folks have historically been unable to participate in the so-called democratic process that exists. And so the very least that we can do is make sure that if people have fought their way and died in order to have a vote, that those who were able to cast their votes have those votes counted. Yes. We will not have this election stolen from us. The second reason that we were there last night protesting is because we are not just interested in a change of politicians. We are interested in a change of society. We are interested in a change of systems to make sure that the very basic fundamental human rights are respected for everybody in this country. We want to make sure, and we are there as a labor movement to make sure that we see system change, because we have seen enough of corporations getting bailed out while working people suffer. We have seen enough of concern around COVID and its impact on business, but not its impact on workers. We know that nurses and healthcare workers in this city and this state and around the country are doing their damnedest to make sure that our loved ones survive, while the folks in the White House and other politicians are only concerned about getting the economy going, not recognizing that the economy is built on the backs of working folks, that we are the ones that make this economy run, and that we are the ones that they need to be taken care of, right? And so that's why we were there, to make sure that there's PPE for everybody, that there's health care for everybody. Health care is a fundamental human right, and you shouldn't be going into debt or dying because you don't have access to quality health care. We were there last night because we need to make sure that housing is respected as a fundamental human right. Nobody should be without housing, especially in Minnesota with the winter coming on. That's what politicians need to be focusing on. We were there last night because everybody deserves to get home at the end of the day, whether that's working folks who need to make sure that they are safe and healthy at work, whether that's Black and brown folks who are concerned about whether their loved ones are going to get home or whether they're going to be pulled over and killed by the police, whether the young folks are concerned about what happens in a protest. We are there to make sure that everybody gets home safe and sound at the end of the day. We were there last night, and we were part of a beautiful, beautiful movement of people in the streets demanding justice, demanding fundamental
this guy who
human
keeps
rights,
pacing
demanding
around
systemic change in our society,
the
because
press
that is what
conference.
is so desperately needed.
And he has a couple of people with him, and so we've noticed that community marshals and some other community leaders have actually now started following them, as they appear to be agitators, and they definitely are not familiar faces in the community. And and so the one guy we just followed, he continues to actually go back over to the group of Trump protesters. And so in situations like this, we do hear that there may be incidences where Trump supporters come up to agitate or cause harm. And so there are a lot of community marshals and community leaders who are on high alert as individuals like this guy continue to pace back and forth and agitate.
It should not have happened. We have the fundamental constitutional right to protest, to air our grievances, and
as you can see now, there's probably about 5 or 6 people who are following behind him and questioning him, and it appears as though he's not giving clear answers to them as he continues to pace back and forth.
Right to protest is respected, and to demand that our voices are heard. And regardless of what Yahoo.
So he was asked, why is he here? He says,
because we know, just like the fella in the White House, there are lots of clown shows that people try to put on to distract us from the real issues. Let the people know what the real issues are. And the real issue is that we need fundamental social change. We need working people to be the drivers of this society. And we will be out in the streets making sure that black and brown lives matter, making sure that working people matter. And that's the change that we need to see. And that's why we were there last night. Thank you.
Now we will hear from Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee. Midak, come on up. Okay, where's our friends from Midak?
Let's go!
Yeah, Mirak.
Yeah, so we're here representing Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee. And I just want to say that people have been saying that the murder of George Floyd sparked a movement. But it's more than that. Because the murder of George Floyd sparked the creation of a great community. And it's been a real snowball effect. Because every single day our community is growing stronger and stronger. And I thank everyone who was down on the highway with me and the rest of us yesterday. But I also want to thank everyone else who wasn't there. I had a few people reach out and apologize, saying, I'm sorry I couldn't be there. But we all have a part to play in this. And we must realize that even if we weren't there last night, we're each doing our part. Whether that be reaching out, supporting,
so as you can
meeting
see
people
here,
when they come home, comforting
situations
people
are getting a little
home.
tense as this guy continues to pace back and forth,
Pivotal.
trying to record, and he's threatening to hit another person who's here at this press conference.
Going forward, because we're all going to go forward
I really
together.
hope that camera doesn't fall out of your hand. That would be a shame.
That would be a shame.
That would be a shame.
And I just wanted to draw more attention to how much tomfoolery was going on last night.
Yeah.
They brought tons of cops down there.
Yes.
They brought cops from all over the state down there. They brought feds. They brought horses, y'all.
Yeah. Listen.
That's bogus to those horses, y'all. Yeah, so I'm just going to pass it over to Daisy. And she's going to talk a little bit more.
Yes, Daisy!
So what happened yesterday should not have happened. I remember back in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected. protesters took to the streets and they also took to the highway. But nothing like what happened yesterday happened back in 2016. I, as an immigrant, took to the streets when Donald Trump was elected and nothing happened to me. Why? Because the police officers gave us the option to leave the highway and I left. Yesterday, I decided to not get on the highway, but the officers did not give people the choice to leave. They trapped everyone that was cited. And that's wrong. That should have never happened. Yes. And for anyone who, like for me, for example, I'm a DACA recipient. If I were to get cited, that would impact my immigration status. And something that I always say is some Democrats are no different from their Republican counterparts. We all have a right to protest, but our Democratic governor and other elected officials took that right away from us. After what happened back in 2016, some politicians decided to try and pass a law to criminalize highway protesting, but that didn't pass. I always like to also remind people that legality is not synonymous with morality. Just because something is law does not make it a right. And laws are intentionally created to suppress people. But we will not allow people to suppress our voice. And I, as a black immigrant woman, I am tired of the complacency from our Democratic leadership. They are no different from Republicans. Their empty promises are not enough anymore. We need real action. And so for Governor Walz and other elected officials, we expect you to drop the charges of everyone who was given a citation yesterday. Thank you.
One of the reasons it was important to have
in Minnesota where individuals are standing up in response to what happened last night. There was a protest last night on the freeway where between 600 and 700 people were trapped on the freeway for about 5 hours, and all of those individuals were given citations. And so the community is coming together today to say that their protest last night was not illegal and that all of the charges should be dropped. What we have seen since we've been here is that there's a small group of Trump protesters who have started to gather surrounding this press conference that's happening. And some of those individuals have been pacing back and forth, agitating individuals who are here to stand in solidarity with the charges being dropped. And right now, we're going to hear from Tashira Garraway, who is one of the individuals who was on the freeway last night and who is also a very well-known community activist here in Minnesota.
Governor Tim Walz has my cell phone number. He calls me regularly. But for some reason, when we were stuck on the freeway last night, he wouldn't answer his phone. Listen! He clearly knew what was going on. He wasn't asleep. But he wouldn't answer his phone. He knows that he just met with us a couple weeks ago, our families, pretended like he was on our side, that he was there to help us. But when we needed his help the most last night, he wasn't there. While the families, we had Taryn, Travis Jordan family, Justin Tigan's family, Marcus Golden family, Paul Castaway family, Phil Quinn's family. So we had a bunch of families out there. We have lost our loved ones at the hands of police here in the state of Minnesota. We have been pushed to the point of taking it to the streets and taking it to the freeways because they're not listening. Nothing is changing otherwise. Like I told Keith Ellison last night, your education don't save you. Your position don't save you. That suit you wear don't save you. Your life is the same value of that man that ended up dead in that trash can, which is my son's father. It's the same value, because as long as you're walking around with this skin color on your body, your life is the same value to these people. So don't ever get it confused, Keith. Don't ever get it confused, Hamilton. This is a system that is designed against us no matter what position. And you want to know how I know that your position don't save you? Because the only officer to ever serve time is a minority man for killing a white woman out of all these murders here in the state of Minnesota. That's how we know your position don't save you. So to Governor Tim Walz, you can kiss my ass, Tim Walz. You have pushed the people. You guys have pushed the people, our families. Imagine how we feel for my son to know that his mom is out here fighting for his dad, but yet these people got guns and surrounding me, surrounding the rest of these families. He look at this woman like an aunt. He look at this woman like an aunt. We're family now. To know that we're out there barricaded, feet cold, gotta use the bathroom, guns. The only person that, the man checked my purse, patted me down. I said, the only person that got a gun and ready for war is you. And Tim Walz, for you to bring those people out there, you know why we out there. We just sat inside of this place 3 weeks ago. You know why the people are out there. You know that we're fighting for our loved ones. You know that we have been pushed to this extent. And you gonna send them motherfuckers out there? Well, guess what? Guess what? You didn't do nothing but fire us up more. You didn't do nothing but fire us up more. Because before I stop fighting for Travis Joy, Demetrius Hill, and then Justin Tiger, the person you put in that garbage can, you're gonna have to put me in that motherfucker too before I stop fighting. I'm not gonna stop fighting. I'm gonna go on the freeway. I'm gonna go to your mother's house. I don't care who else I gotta go through. I do not care. Because our people didn't deserve to die like that and shed blood on these streets. They didn't deserve it. And we gotta do what we gotta do because nothing's changing. Y'all gonna listen to us and y'all gonna make the necessary changes. We got 2 bills sitting on the table that can't make it through the Senate. Statute of limitation and qualified immunity. You guys won't even let it make it. The Senate won't even let it make it to the governor to sign off his law. And y'all want us to stop doing what we doing? We have been pushed to this, and we're gonna keep our boots on the ground and keep doing what we're doing. All power to the people. No justice! No justice! No justice! Thank you.
Well, you know what the funniest thing? Why are we paying tax dollars? We pay taxes, don't we? Yep. You know, for them to put them fucking police out there at that time of night, we feel like we're paying. They need to take that money and put it somewhere else. I sat there last night and watched it. I was following everything. It was sad to see them standing there like they were robots. Listen. I saw the people out there still chanting. They were dancing. I noticed how they were standing there, and I seen them how they barricaded. I did recognize at least 300 people got tickets. Instead of taking your card, trying to take your money, they need to be putting that money somewhere else. I just feel like this. They waited till after election day to somehow want to barricade the people on 35. I just feel that this money that they getting paid at that time of night, they should have been out there looking for somebody who's robbing their house. I just think that they should be out there getting somebody that's burglarizing, maybe killing somebody. They take time to mess with innocent people out there doing a peaceful protest. That is what you call some delaying, insane, and evil things are doing in this country today. You know, they waited to be involved with innocent protesters. All we want is justice. All we want is peace. I'm looking for a demand to open up my case, to reopen up every innocent woman that has lost their child, the life that's been stolen from us. We ain't looking for nothing else but for them to go and just terrorize, to find some kind of way to just victimize us. You know, there's going to be some type of closure one day where we're going to be laughing at them because victory is going to happen and it's going to come our way. They killed my son. They murdered. The thing is, we just hope it won't be no one else. I'm looking for them to drop these charges too. Eliminate it, because you know the officers, they're getting paid for just to barricade people on the freeway. Why? They don't need no money. They should have been home. They should have let these people go to have them out there that long hours of the night. Thank you.
My name is Taryn Ving. My boyfriend is Travis Jordan. He was murdered November 9th, 2018. What Governor Tim Walz showed us last night, what he proved to us, what Mayor Fry proved to us, what the City Council of Minneapolis proved to us, was that we don't fucking matter. If we mattered, all that funding that was used for the police and all their riot gear, that would have went to something that would have helped Travis Jordan. It could have gone to a co-responder program or to end police-only phone calls during a mental health crisis, which CUAPB has already put in research and recommendation and gave it to them at City Hall. That is what the money needs to be funded for. That is what the money needs to go to. If they were in place, Travis Jordan would be alive. Mental health crisis, someone experiencing a mental health crisis is not a crime. It is not a death sentence. You killed him at his lowest. You murdered him at his lowest when he was feeling down, when he was sad, he had nowhere to go, reaching out for help. All of that riot gear that they had for all those police officers, hundreds of them, that could have gone to tasers that could have been used to de-escalate situations that for Travis. He should still be alive today. Till this day, there is still no co-responder program in the city of Minneapolis. They shut that down. I don't know why, because during this pandemic, everyone is in a mental health crisis. Everyone is experiencing something. You're not close to your friends. You're not close to family. You have to stay home. You have to stay isolated. Everyone is going through something during this pandemic. So we need to allocate those funds to mental health professionals that can go out and help with these to respond to the people in a mental health crisis, and just back up what the CUAPB has already put out. Thank you.
Thank you. These folks were out there all night last night. I kept watching them and loving on them and being glad to see them there. And they're out here fighting for everybody's family. So thank you all so much. Thank you. Now I want to bring up Loretta and Jay with Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar.
My name's Loretta Van Pelt. I'm an organizer with Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar. And also I'm a parent, and I was out there with my child last night. My child wasn't handcuffed. I wasn't separated from my child because my child's 10 years old. However, they handcuffed me. They did all that in front of my kid.
Wow.
And the thing is, his wife said something like, "Oh, they're gonna learn a lesson." Well, let me tell you, my kid learned a lesson. My kid learned that the next time they may cuff a 10-year-old child. They may cuff, because they don't care anymore. They do not care who they target, because they sure don't care who they kill. But they don't care who they target. And so my kid witnessed me being handcuffed, me getting my mugshot taken, me getting processed. All I got was a ticket. And so I'm trying to understand why I was handcuffed to get a ticket. I've gotten tickets for speeding and for other stuff before and never been handcuffed. But I'm a peaceful protester on the highway and I'm getting handcuffed. The people who were out there for violence were all those cops in that tactical gear. We're pointing rifles at us. We're doing the sound thing to us. We're and all that other stuff. Those are the people who were wanting the violence. We were there peaceful. We were there for peaceful. We were militant, yes. We have demands, yes. But let me tell you, we weren't out there to fight to be violent. It was them. And so I'm demanding that they drop the charges against me, and they drop the charges against the 645 other people who got ticketed last night. Because those are some bullshit charges. That's bullshit. And I'm done with the state. This state is proven that black lives do not matter, that native lives do not matter, that Hmong lives do not matter, that undocumented people's lives do not matter. And I'm done. And you know what? He's got to go. Mayor Fry's got to go. The whole damn city council has got to go. Because they could have done what we have demanded years ago. We have demanded that they hold the cops accountable. We have demanded that they solve the housing crisis in this city, in this county, in this state. And they have not done a damn thing. They sat on their hands. And this is why it's like what my sister Shashira said. That's why they pushed us to the highway. They pushed us out in the streets because we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I don't regret anything I did last night. And I never will. And I'll be out there again. And if I get arrested again, so be it. Because I told myself, if that's what it takes to make change in this, then damn it, arrest me again. I don't give a fuck.
My name is Jay Yates. I was also one of the organizers for last night's protest, and I want to start off by addressing my fellow protesters. And I want to say again that it was such an honor to be there with all of you. That is what community is. That is what real democracy looks like. If somebody was cold, somebody took off their jacket. If somebody needed a snack, somebody pulled something out of their backpack. We took care of each other out there, and nobody is going to make it out to be any different. We know exactly what we were out there for. We stayed tight, we stayed organized, and we got it done. We shut down that highway for a lot longer than we anticipated, but we got it done. And to Tim Walz and the other clown cops that were out there keeping us on this highway for 5+ hours, I want to talk about lessons. I want to talk about what I learned from that experience, is that I thought I couldn't get any more radicalized. I thought that I couldn't be any more angry at the DFL and their embarrassing little initiatives that they keep throwing at us every time we ask for real change. I thought I couldn't be any more angry. But look, Tim Walz, you managed to make me more angry with you. You managed to make me more furious at you when you trapped a bunch of minors, parents, and unarmed protesters on a highway for 5+ hours in the cold to make a point. Well, you did make a point. You made a point that you support fascism. You made a point that you support repressing the people's voice. You made a point that you are taking cues from your Republican counterparts and oppressing us in this supposedly progressive state. So the only lesson that I learned from you last night, and this goes to Tim Walz, to Mayor Frey, and to any of the other politicians that supported this action and allowed these cops to do this to us. The only thing that I learned is that I know who I'm not voting for, and I know whose house to pull up to every day if I have to. I don't get no sleep because of y'all, then y'all not gonna get sleep because of me. I will be out here every day with my family and my comrades until you do the right thing and give us what we demand. That's community control, that's housing for all of our unhoused people out here before winter comes, and that is an end to oppressing us and keeping us from peaceful assembly. Drop every single one of these charges against us. Every single one. And if you don't, I will be mailing my ticket to you. I will be mailing you a copy and you will pay that. You are not going to criminalize me for being on my streets that I pay for. I paid the taxes for 94. I am not going to bend to fascism in any form. I don't care if it's red or blue. I do not bow to fascists. And none of these people out here will either. So if you want to teach lessons, then learn this one. We will keep coming out. Every single night if we have to. I also want to give a quick shout out to an event that Taryn is having on the 9th, I believe, at 4 p.m. in front of the BCA. And we want to make sure that Maryland Avenue, St. Paul. So all of our comrades that are out there last night, let's show up for that too. Thank you. Drop the charges! 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 Drop up now! Drop up now! That's right. Drop them now. And let our sister out of the jail. Anita McKinley. That's right. And I want to bring up now Meredith with the Anti-War Committee, one of the other planning organizations for last night's event. Take it away, Meredith.
My name is Meredith Abbey, and I'm an organizer with the Anti-War Committee. And I think it's important to understand that last night's action represented a lot of progressive movements that we have in the Twin Cities. The Black Lives Matter movement was there in big numbers. The union movement was there in big numbers. The student movement was there in big numbers. But also the anti-war movement was there in big numbers. And I think it's important to understand that the anti-war movement knows, because this happens with both parties all the time, that regardless of who's in the White House, we cannot relax. We cannot stop our work. Our work needs to keep going. And so we were definitely there to say Trump out now. And we have been since before he was even elected. Because we have been against his racist, anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant rhetoric since the very first time he opened his mouth. But additionally, we know that regardless of who is elected, and if it is Biden, that he represents a change in that like an inch, okay? But the fact is that there's a lot more to do, and people in the Middle East don't care if bombs are dropped on them by Democrats or Republicans. At the end of the day, if you are murdered by U.S. imperialism, you are still dead. And that is exactly what our brothers and sisters on the streets here in Minneapolis and St. Paul tell us. It doesn't matter if you are killed by cops when there's a Democrat in charge or a Republican in charge, you still lost your loved one. Last night, we organized and were a part of a mass action that we wanted to kick off. This okay, we're done with the election, now let's move forward and get some real change. But what we didn't plan was for that to be, I think, in my time as a 20-plus year organizer, the largest mass civil disobedience that's happened in the Twin Cities. But that was, a matter of fact, what occurred. We had over 600 people, almost 700 people get arrested last night. Now, normally, when the Anti-War Committee organizes civil disobedience, we like it to be planned, that we decided that. But the cops made that decision. They decided it was going to be a mass civil disobedience action. We didn't decide it was going to be a mass civil disobedience action, but there were some powerful lessons learned last night. People who were scared, who said, I wasn't planning on doing this today, they got empowered. They got empowered. They felt support from their community. They felt taken care of. As the sister from SDS was talking about, people are doing Know Your Rights trainings. People are talking to each other about how having family members who they didn't even know offer to go pick up their car, to go pick up them. People were exchanging and take care of each other. We saw movement building last night. And that is 100% what we wanted to have happen as a result of this protest. We wanted to organize a movement so that we could be organizing for a progressive agenda for here in Minnesota, but here in this country. And we got closer to that goal. So we're going to stay in the streets, and the Anti-War Committee will always be there. Thank you very much.
We are going to stay in the streets.
And one of the people that helps us stay in the streets, where are you, Peter? Come on up here, Peter. Hey, Peter! Hey, Peter! Come here, Peter. He's over there somewhere, I know. Come on, Peter. Don't be shy.
We love you, Peter!
So, not sure where he's wandering around there, but hopefully he'll come back. But I just want us to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Peter Pepper, who is our sound guy extraordinaire with Revolutionary Sound. Thank you, Peter! Woo! Big shout out to Peter. Oh, he's in his van? Oh, no. But, okay, come on, Peter, because I want to say a big thank you to you. I will tell you from my own experience. Peter, 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 Peter.
We love you, Peter!
That's right. This guy will go everywhere that we need him. He'll come at the drop of a hat, anywhere and everywhere. He does this out of his own good heart and his own money. So when you get a chance, give him a donation because he had to go get the van out of the impound. So give him all the love. I want to say thank you so much to Peter. Thank you, Peter! What's your Venmo? Peter, what's your Venmo?
So Venmo is at Camp Jungle Love. The last 4 is 6048. And there's a story behind that. Anyway, the Cash App we actually organize a couple different people that have sound resources, and we set up a Cash App for that to help support all the people that are doing sound, and that is what's up here? Sorry, it's that $ and then just Revolutionary Sound. So $ Revolutionary Sound if you want to donate to help keep sound coming out to the events. We certainly appreciate the support, and we're just honored and thrilled, and it's such a privilege to be here and stand with all these amazing people. Like, I've never felt love like this before, so I'm definitely here for this. And to the cops, if you thought we were loud before... Okay, charge accepted, bitches. Let's do it.
That's right. Kept the dance party going last night. Yeah. And to bring us home tonight, Toussaint Morrison with On-Site Public Media.
Just want to say thank you to Michelle and all the work that they do with Communities United Against Police Brutality and all the people that are a part of it. I want to say thank you to Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar for carrying a black man's name past his point of departure from this earth. I want to thank all of the community organizers and leaders that stood boots on the ground and kept people balanced while they were fearing for their lives, they were fearing for their livelihood, and fearing for their freedom. And I'm not going to lie, as I think Raisha saw me, I was one of them. I was definitely had a deer in the headlights look, and as a black man in that situation, it's unprecedented. And the one thing that I will say is that the folks here in Minneapolis, we're not alone. And for our brothers and sisters and family out in Los Angeles, out in other major cities, they saw the same thing on the National Day of Protest. Everybody was boots on the ground. And even for some my brother out in LA who got arrested as a press member, they saw the press badge on him and they arrested him anyways. And so that's what was happening. And it is quite the day when white supremacists will show up to interrupt a press conference detesting a Democrat. It is quite the day. It's just kind of odd. And it's what happened 3 days ago when we pulled up on Mayor Fry's palatial brownstone to disrupt it and have unhoused folks speak to him and the broken promises that he made running a campaign, which a lot of us are familiar with, that he said he was going to end homelessness in 5 years. So 3 days ago, we pulled up to his palatial estate, Trumpers and white supremacists tried to disrupt us, and we said, hey, we're just here for housing. They didn't know why they were there. And then 2 days ago, you saw the brutalization in an affluent white neighborhood where the property value is averaging $800K to $1 million. At Bryant Square Park, stood there with my comrades with 15 police squad cars, pulled up and beat up 17 female presenting bodies and 1 male presenting body, and then threw them away in jail. They did that 2 days ago. And then yesterday, just as Jay said, it was no greater honor than to stand on that highway with all those people and call them your family. When people say, tell me what community looks like, that is what community looks like. And when we said who the people, we said we the people. Who the people? We the people. Who the people? We the people. And we certainly are the people. And 2 nights ago, when those people were brutalized and thrown into jail, that was under this man's no tolerance policy. And last night, when you see children crying, when you see undocumented folks fearing for their lives, when you see women trying to use a restroom and people turning their backs and creating makeshift restrooms, that's community. People showing each other love. And here's the flip of it. You could have asked 5 different police officers or Hennepin County Sheriff's Department workers or National Guardsmen or feds who were there. Feds were there. You could have asked 5 different ones of them and asked them, why are you here? And you could have gotten 6 different stories. They didn't know why they were there. They had no clue why they were there. And they had no plan. They had absolutely no plan. But I tell you who knew why they were there. The people on the highway, we knew why the fuck we were there. We knew exactly what we stood for, what we're standing for, and what we're demanding. And the people that chose to take the high road need to get these charges dropped. We're doing our jobs, and we're not getting paid for it. We're standing up for lives that are no longer here. We're standing up for Jamar Clark. We're standing up for Philando Castile, Terrence Franklin, Justin Tigan, Travis Jordan, Marcus Golden, Demetrius Hill. We are standing for the black men and the other bodies that have been put into the ground by this state-sanctioned city commission tax-paid murders. We're standing for them, demanding justice, demanding better, and we're standing there, we want it, and we are the ones that should get the charges dropped. And the police are the ones who should be held accountable. Tim Walz needs to come out here, look all these black folks and people that were boots on the ground in the eye and say, I'm sorry, I messed up. It's the least you could do. And guess what? Tim, you're going to get to go back to your job. You're not going to be dead. You're not going to be behind bars. You're not going to be that child on the highway crying to their mothers. You're not going to be that woman on the highway looking for a restroom. You get to go back to here. You get to go right back to here. And for the cops, for the cops who thought that their tactics were going to be able to shut us down, think again. They shined lights up at the apartments that were filming. They said press can leave. They wanted the cameras out, but the cameras turned in. The cameras turned towards their actions and their illegal behavior, illegally detaining 1,000 people. 600 some were arrested. They were way over that. They were way over that. They shined lights to block out the cameras. They feigned brutality. People feel for their lives. They thought that they were going to kettle us, tear gas us, and put us away. And that's what the sheriff's lieutenant wanted to do. But all they could do is cite us and let us walk. But what we know now is this no tolerance policy, just as Tashira said, has fired us up. If they thought beating up 18 random people in a park was going to do it, If they thought that holding us on a highway was going to shut us up and pacify us into the night, Hell no. Hell no. Hell no. We demand better. We demand far better. And I'll tell you this as I wrap up. The next mayor, the next person that's going to sit in that house, The next person that's going to lead the city council, those people, they're right here. Look around you. They're right here. And they got your back. And I know that running and campaigning for something can be a pain in the ass, but we got your back. We do have your back. The future of the state and the city was on that highway. The person that's going to reside in that house was on that highway last night. It could be any one of y'all. It could be any one of y'all. And we are here for you. We are absolutely here for you. You have a community. You have people that you can trust. And this is how we distribute trust in situations and scenarios that are as fiery as they were yesterday. So know that you can trust your comrades. Know that you have a community. Know that you were in the future of the state, of the city, and that the entire world was watching whether they liked it or not. And for the people in those apartments that they brutalized, they just came around the other end. They maced them, they pulled up with their bikes, and then whenever you see them pull up on their bikes, I can't help but think, and then they pull up with their horses. How much money was wasted last night? And you got folks in encampments that you promised you were going to give houses to. Tens of millions of dollars were wasted last night, and you could be spending it on people that are sleeping out in the cold because winter is coming. You need to drop these charges, you need to apologize to these people, and you need to get back to work because you haven't been doing it for a long time. Who the people? Who the people? All power to the people.
That's right, all power to the people. So we're going to wrap it up here tonight. Thank you all so much for being here. I want to just tell you a couple of quick announcements. If you are someone who got cited last night, if you were arrested or cited, if you haven't had the opportunity, please call the National Lawyer Guild hotline number. Ready? No, 1 second. Everybody say, no, 1 second, grabbing that phone, right? 612-444-2654. You guys know it. Oh, I love it. Yeah, we did. Let's hear it again. Let's hear it again. Let's hear it again. 612-444-2654. Woo! That's right. If your bicycle or backpack was taken or you had some other property that was taken last night, it was all taken to the State Patrol West Metro office in Golden Valley. It's I didn't bring the address with me, but it's on Lilac Lane. You can look it up on the internet, but they've got your stuff. I called them today to make sure people could get their stuff back. What they said is just bring an ID and a copy of your citation. You can get your items back. So if you've got bikes, backpacks, any of that kind of stuff out there, that kind of thing. If your car got towed and it cost you money, we are prepared to cover that money. Standing up for your rights should not cost you like that, okay? So we got your back. We got your back every time. You know we do. Right. Right. What we're going to do is CUAPB will front the money and we'll get paid back by the Freedom Fund. So we can go with you, help you get your vehicle back. It's an arrangement we made. But oh yeah, I'm coming to that. You haven't got any chance yet. I'll get there. Okay. That's okay. I'm not forgetting. Okay, so if you got a car and you haven't been able to get it back because you didn't have money, some of them they just release it, but some of them they make you pay. If you didn't get it back yet, you can come talk to me. You can call CUAPB's number. We are going to take care of you guys, and then we're working with Minnesota Freedom Fund because they have a process, and we'll make sure that we get it all squared up, but we'll make sure you get your car back first, okay? So that's real important.
Thank you, Michelle.
Hey, every day. Last piece, 646 people got cited, as we know, right? It's up to you to decide what you want to do about your citation, but one of the things we're trying to do is to organize for people not to pay those citations, not to plead guilty. This ain't a traffic ticket, you guys. This is more than that, okay? So there's going to be an arrestee meeting on November 15th. The location is to be determined. Go on the National Lawyers Guild Facebook page to find it. I believe it's at 4 p.m. on the 15th. Look for it. We're going to be putting up information on that Lawyers Guild page to tell you what to do about your citation. Right now, they haven't even got them all entered in the system yet. You couldn't even go on the system right now and see when you're supposed to go to court, okay? Because they just have too much work to do and screw them for having to do it, you know? That's on them, okay? That's on them. That's their problem. But we're going to be making sure everybody who wants representation can get it. That's important, y'all. Everybody who wants representation, it's National Lawyers Guild, Legal Rights Center, and the Public Defender's Office working together to make sure everybody that wants representation can get it. You know what? I can't tell folks what to do. We know everybody's situations are different, but let me put it like this. Here's what we know. Here's what we learned from the RNC. Here's what we learned from other mass arrests. If people just do not lay down and take those things and do not pay the fee and demand a court date and all of that stuff, guess what happens? You jam up their court system. They're already jammed up from COVID. They're screwed. If we say hell to the no, what's going to happen? They're going to have to drop the charges, y'all. So everybody's covered no matter what. I will tell you that even if some people do go down on charges, Minnesota Freedom Fund is prepared to pay for those charges. We got your back. Got your back. But honestly, I really hope people will just say, hell no, we're not going to go along with this. Because one of the conditions that they often make, and I want you to hear this now, I'm telling you, somebody's been doing this for a few minutes and been arrested 8 times. One of the things that they like to do, they like to tell you, no same or similar for a year, we'll drop the charges. What does that do to you?
Makes you a target.
Takes you out of commission for a year. Hell to the no. We need you for that year. We need you for that year. So don't rush off and go, gosh, I got to deal with this. Oh my God, it's terrible. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. We got your back. We're going to take care of you financially that way with the ticket charges. But really, let's try to make them drop everybody's charges. That's the real solution. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being out here tonight, demanding our rights, standing up for your rights, standing up for a better society, standing up for an end to police brutality, an end to homelessness and the deprivations that we all suffer under the system. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great evening, and we will see you all again real soon. First at the Travis Jordan 2-year anniversary, which is going to be at 4 p.m. on November 9th at the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension on Maryland Avenue. And there's other protests in the works, my friends. Other protests in the works. Keep your eyes open. We got good plans for you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here.
All right, well, if you're just tuning in, we are streaming live in Minnesota right in front of the governor's mansion where a press conference just wrapped up. This was a response to a huge amount of arrests that we saw last night. There were protesters who decided to take the freeway, just, kind of calling out the injustices that have happened here in Minnesota, obviously demanding justice for George Floyd, and in addition to that, a response to the election. And so we saw over 20 organizations come here in front of the governor's mansion and demand that he drop the charges against the 646 protesters who were cited last night for exercising their First Amendment right. And so last night, if you had a chance to check out our stream, Nico was streaming live for about 6.5 hours from the beginning of that march all the way until the very end when individuals were released. And for 5 hours, over 600 people were trapped on the freeway. What we saw happen after protesters took the highway is that they were kettled, a tactic that we have seen happen and been implemented here in the last few months in response to protests. Protesters will come out. We saw a protest that happened in front of the 5th Precinct where individuals were protesting the release of Derek Chauvin, and all of a sudden they were met with hundreds of officers who all had riot gear. In that particular incident, people were instructed to move in a specific direction, at which time they were met with hundreds more of officers who then eventually arrested them. That night there were 50 arrests. I believe a couple of nights ago there was another incident where they used that same tactic. And so last night that tactic was used on Interstate 94. And so from the West End, there were dozens of state patrol, sheriffs, Minneapolis Police Department officers who all made a line and made it impossible for people to leave the freeway. And as protesters decided to exit the freeway, they were then blocked off. There was no instruction that was given, as we heard from several community leaders tonight. There was no dispersal orders that were given from any of the authorities, and they were trapped. They were trapped there for over 5 hours. They were all issued citations, and so tonight community gathered to hold a press conference demanding that those charges were dropped. What we did notice when we arrived was there were a little over a dozen Trump supporters, and Toussaint, one of the speakers today during this press conference, pointed something really peculiar out. You know, he said it's an interesting time in America when you have Republican Trump supporters showing up to agitate a press conference that's calling out a Democratic governor. And so it's just really peculiar. I think actually, if you look over here, one of those Trump supporters is still standing around. We're just not quite sure why they're here. We've seen several vehicles that have Trump stickers and Trump signs and Trump flags drive by, honking their horn. We've seen individuals who are screaming, pace back and forth this press conference tonight, saying different things to try to instigate people and agitate them. However, we did see the community respond to that. There were white allies who intervened and used their bodies to protect any harm being done to Black and brown people who are here using their voices. And we saw a lot of African American men step up and say that they're not going to tolerate that type of behavior. There was no violent incident or anything, but there were some intense moments this evening. But overall, communities coming together today to demand that the charges are dropped against the 646 protesters who were cited and arrested last night. And something that Nico pointed out, he was covering a protest on Interstate 94 in response to the killing of Philando Castile, where about 200 people were arrested, and 100 of them really stood together and fought those charges and eventually got their charges dropped. And so we actually heard those specific instructions come from Michelle Gross, who is the president of Communities United Against Police Brutality. She instructed that they actually have funding for people whose cars were towed last night, and that they want to help provide support for individuals who want to fight those charges if they are not dropped. Another interesting thing that should be pointed out is that a lot of these community organizers are either relatives of someone who was killed by police. There's a couple of attorneys, activists, and just other organizers who have been doing this work for several years. And so through their work, they have developed relationships with elected officials, with the governor himself, and with the mayor of Minneapolis. And so they wanted to inform the community and they wanted to inform the press that they were reaching out to elected officials last night asking if they could be released, and informing elected officials that there was no dispersal order given and that they were actually trying to exit the freeway when they were blocked in by officers. And so to see that type of communication happen between community organizers and elected officials, and yet and still nothing happens except for 700 tax-paying citizens are locked on a freeway for 5 hours, is really frustrating for them, as they expressed today. And so we might pop around and see if anybody wants to make any further statements about what happened yesterday. Would you be willing to So yeah, we'll talk to a couple of the organizers and just get more context and information as to what's next. A lot of folks said that this did not teach them a lesson as what Governor Walz was trying to do. That was kind of the message that a lot of folks were getting, was that Governor Walz was trying to teach protesters a lesson. But yet and still, one thing that you said was that the arrest that happened yesterday did not teach a lesson. It really fired everybody up and has people more united than ever and ready to move forward. And so I'm curious to know, you're a well-known organizer in the community. What's next?
I think that what's next is continuing to post up outside these people's houses, and demanding that they drop the charges until they drop the charges. And I think the other thing is, we're going to keep going business as usual in a sense, because we have other events for people that have been stolen from us. We have other actions that are being organized nationally that we are going to be participating in. And so I think that the intention for this was to slow us down, and it simply hasn't worked. Like, we're still planning on having those actions. We're still planning on doing what we were planning to do. So I really think that it backfired on them spectacularly. I think that people are, whatever perceived sort of slowdown in protests that people have been talking about, I think that this is only going to ramp people up more and get more numbers out here.
Absolutely. And so what we've witnessed at the last 3 or 4 protests that we've covered is this kettling tactic that these different state agencies are using to really discourage protests from taking place. And there's been a lot of speculation that these tactics are now being deployed because of the riots that happened after George Floyd. Can you talk about why it's so important that citizens in Minnesota continue to have the right to exercise their First Amendment?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is that I really dislike sort of separating protesters into rioters and legitimate protesters. I think that that's absolutely ahistorical. I think that it's absolutely classist a lot of times, and it's ignorance about why riots usually become riots. It's almost always the police provoking protesters and then forcing them to defend themselves. So kettling is not an appropriate tactic regardless of whether it's being classified as a riot or a protest. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that kettling is not a new tactic. Kettling was happening when we were protesting for Philando, and kettling has happened since then. But I think that the difference here is that police feel more empowered to be even more aggressive after George Floyd, because they feel justified because of the rhetoric of these are violent thugs, these are rioters, they just want to destroy property. And so they feel empowered to use these excessive tactics on us. So yeah, I guess kettling feels very old hat at this point to most of us, but yeah, it's still a really reprehensible tactic against unarmed people.
And for folks who are not really connected and don't know how that they can use their voice or their bodies, I hear that a lot. People are like, well, there's just nothing I can do. What would you say to those folks who definitely understand what you guys are doing and want to be helpful?
Yeah, I would say to those people that there's always something. There are all levels of ability in the movement. There are all levels of expertise in the movement. There are all levels of education. It's about leveraging what skills you have and just showing up and saying, like, what can I do? That's all that I did. I was not a formal organizer before this summer. I attended a lot of protests. I attended TCC for J's anti-corporate pride march. I have attended the Philando protest, but I never organized anything until this summer. And I started organizing because I was out of school and because I was asked to. They asked for people who were trans BIPOC people to help organize Pride, and I was like, that's me. What can I do? How can I help? It's really as simple as that. I think that people who aren't in the movement yet sometimes think that there's like a big sort of like ceremony, you have to like pay dues or something. It's not like that. You just show up and you do what you can, and you help where help is needed. You go where it's needed. And so to those people, I think that I would say start getting involved in your mutual aid pages. Start following mutual aid sites on social media. One of the sites that I work for in the time that I'm not working for TCC for J is CanMN, which we're a food distribution site. And so we're always needing donations. We're always needing volunteers. We're always needing connections for like bulk foods and supplies. So really anybody can help. Anybody can do something.
And then last question I have for you, unless there's anything else you want to add. I know everybody was really united in the messaging of dropping the charges. For folks who are at home, is there anything that they can do to support the effort of getting the charges dropped?
Yes, I would say keep blowing up Governor Walz's phone. Keep blowing up Mayor Frey's phone, even though he turned it off pretty quick last night. Keep blowing up any politician you can think of in this state and pressure them to drop the charges. And if you can, come out when we continue to do actions that are demanding that demand. And just keep coming out in general. I think that part of this, lesson teaching that they were trying to do is because they are afraid. They're afraid for their seats, and they're afraid that people are going to realize that it's not us that need them. They need us. They need us to get reelected. And so I think that they're realizing that, and they're running scared. And so the best thing people can do is to keep pressuring them and to come out to the events.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's it from me.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. So if you're just tuning in, a press conference just wrapped up that was held right here in front of the Minnesota Governor's Mansion in response to all of the arrests that took place last night on Interstate 94. 646 people were cited. There were some points that were made today about even that process for individuals to get a citation but be handcuffed and have their photo taken was a little bit odd. And in addition to that, the fact that people, when they were escorted off of the freeway, were loaded on buses and dropped off in different places. Really peculiar tactics that community hasn't been able to explain, that they feel like have been used as a way to quote unquote teach protesters a lesson and discourage them from continuing to exercise their First Amendment right. And so I'll pop around and see if there's any other community leaders that would like to elaborate, but predominantly individuals gathered today asking for charges to be dropped. And so one of those individuals was Tashira Garraway and Nakima Levy. And
Bring it again.
Jasmine, you coming over here too?
Yeah, we're all here together.
all right. So you ladies spoke today during this press conference. Can you elaborate a little bit more for those who are just tuning in why it's so important that Governor Walz take heed and drop the charges?
It is important that Governor Walz drop the charges because he just met with the hurting families that lost their loved ones about 3 weeks ago. He knows exactly why we were out there and what we were fighting for. Sometimes you have to put your position aside and what you getting paid for aside and think about human beings and humanity. We were out there because we lost our loved ones, because we have children at home that don't have fathers. We have mothers without their sons that were out there last night. We have sisters without their brothers. So because Tim Walz met with our families and pretended like he understood everything that we're going through and that he's backing us up in the right things, then his humanity should have never put the same people out there that have brutalized our families, the Minneapolis Police Department, with guns and sticks out there to traumatize us even more. That is mentally traumatizing, and it's mental abuse. It's another way of abusing the people in the community that is sabotaging us. Why would you do that, Keith, or Tim Walz? Why would you send these people out there to traumatize your community even more? And you talk about teaching us a lesson? The only lesson that you taught us was who you really are. That's what you taught us. The only thing that you taught us was how you can brutalize mentally our community even more than what's already been done. You can't hurt me no more than what you've already done and what these police have already done to me and my son.
That's right.
So you think that you're sending somebody out there to teach us a lesson? Well, guess what? You only fired us up even more. We will do what we have to do to get the justice that we deserve. Put your position aside and think as a human being. What would you do if this was your son in the garbage? What would you do if your son got killed in a mental health check? What would you do? Our backs is up against the wall. We don't got no choice. We have been pushed to this point to go to the freeway for you to listen to us and for changes to be made. So don't think that you're traumatizing us or scaring us, because what you're doing is firing us up to continue to fight for justice. Thank you.
Woo! I can't add nothing to that.
Well, thank you so much, Tashira. I was just going to ask really quick, you know, one thing that I've noticed is this increased use of force against peaceful protests since George Floyd was killed. And it really just feels like it's a tactic to get people to stop exercising their First Amendment right. Can you talk about why it's so important that our community maintains their right to be able to peacefully protest?
Historically, law enforcement and government have always tried to stop the will of the people and the voices of the people when demanding change. And what we saw last night was no different. We saw the governor of this state use his executive power to try to quell peaceful protesters by trapping us on the freeway and sending hundreds of unnecessary law enforcement officers who had ammunition, who had big sticks, who had adrenaline and far too much testosterone and white supremacy to be out there ready for action against nonviolent peaceful protesters that included children. It is absolutely unacceptable that the state would treat us like criminals when at the end of the day we are calling out the criminality within the system, which is allowing police officers to kill people with impunity and expecting us to sit back and accept it. We refuse to accept it, just like the people of the 50s and 60s who were forced to endure water hoses and vicious police dogs and beatings by police officers who were supposed to uphold the law. They took those beatings. Some of them were murdered, and they kept coming back again and again and again until they dismantled the system of Jim Crow. We stand in the same spirit of those who have come before us, and we will keep coming back again and again and again until the laws change and this wickedness is uprooted from this system.
Thank you so much, Nakima. And as a mother myself, I can only imagine, you know, you going out there to protest and then being stuck on a freeway for 5 hours, separated from your child. You know, that causes a lot of distress, you know, and when you plan, hey, I'm going to come pick my kid up in an hour, and it turns into 5 hours. Could you talk a little bit about how that impacted your family?
Absolutely. We had our 3-year-old daughter at home along with our older children, and it was pretty frustrating to see that we could not exit the freeway, and we didn't know when we were going to get home to our baby. I didn't know if I was going to see my baby the next day or be on a 36-hour hold. I had no idea what law enforcement was going to do in that situation, and that's unacceptable, especially because we were simply exercising our First Amendment right to freedom of speech, and we were standing up for justice. So it is very distressing. Thank God our child was safe. She was actually up when we got home after 1 o'clock this morning.
I would like to speak to that. For me, it was hard because my son knows that I'm out here for his dad. It's hard enough for me because I spend a lot of time away from home and I'm a single mother, thanks to the St. Paul Police Department. So I know that my son, when I talked to him, he was like, Mom, I'm scared. Because he was watching, he could see it. He got Facebook. And he seen them moving in closer and closer, and he knew I was on that freeway. So imagine for my 14-year-old son, knowing what happened to his dad, and then his mom is out there, and he can see these officers with guns, with sticks, and they're constantly moving in closer and closer, and I'm on FaceTime with him. He's like, Mom, are you gonna come home tonight? Because I thought I was going to jail for exercising my First Amendment right to protest. on a public street, and my son is scared. So that was very hurtful for me as a mom. As a mom, it hurt me because I knew the stress that I felt like I was putting my son through. But I'm only doing what I know in my heart is right. It's all I can do for my son and for his dad. I'm only fighting so they won't get a chance to do to my son what they did to his dad. And that hurt me for his sake. So for Tim Walz to allow this, he violated our trust. He violated our families. He really did.
Sharon, I know you personally have worked with a lot of the families here in our community who have lost a loved one to the police, and you have been working to build a relationship with Governor Walz. You talked about that today during the press conference, the fact that you guys were just here at the governor's mansion meeting with him, trying to build community, trying to figure out pathways to justice, pathways to reform, and to know that he issued the order and to know that he's the same person who was presenting that he wanted to be helpful. Can you just share how that makes you feel and what you want people to know?
It makes me feel this. It makes all of our families, because we actually, I'm gonna run because we got a Zoom meeting, but it makes us feel deceived. It makes us feel backstabbed. It makes us feel like, you know. I can see if you didn't know. I can see if you're blinded, like the people maybe out in Maple Grove. They don't have the same experience. It never happened to them. We didn't share our stories with you. But you know. That's what bothers me.
Betrayal.
It's betrayal. My baby was at home crying. That infuriates me as a mother. You know? So, but it's okay though, because I will say this, and then I'm gonna pass the mic on. See, what happened last night needed to happen. It needed to happen. It had to happen the way it happened. Because everything that the enemy and the devil intends for bad, God will turn around for the highest good. Amen. So you know what? They gave us more national attention. And international attention. Just exactly what we need. Because George Floyd case is simmering down a little bit and all the media's left. But guess what? See, God told me when they killed my son, Dad, that it was going to all come out what they've been doing to all of our people in the state of Minnesota. So guess what? Now that they did that, they added more attention to us, which is what we needed. So now these other medias in the other states is going to see us. They're going to come back. And then we're going to continue to share the more stories of the brutalization that's been going on before George Floyd, which led up to George Floyd. So thank you for doing us a favor, because you thought that you was suppressing us. You thought that you were silencing us. You thought that you were making us scared where we wouldn't do it anymore. When in all actuality, you just added more attention that we need for a change to be made. Because the stories is what's going to make the change be made. When people hear the brutalization that's been going on in Minnesota, these are lynchings. They're not scared. These are hunts that's been going on in this state. And it's time for it to come forward, and God is going to bring it forward, because he has the final say, like Ms. Delshia say. Thank you.
I know you two ladies got to run. If you have a few moments, I know that you had stepped forward and wanted to speak. If my memory serves me correctly, I think you said that you were out with your child yesterday, and that had a very big impact on your family.
Yeah, I was out with my partner and our 16-year-old daughter. We've all been out to a lot of the protests together, really for our daughter's whole life. It's not the first time any of us have been on a highway, but it is the first time we've been surrounded by that many officers as a whole family. We made the decision
All right, we gotta go. You can go ahead right where you were.
All right, she and her other mom were, processed early. And then when that happened, my 16-year-old was handcuffed, as was her other mom. Then they were separated, and they were put on separate buses. And then not only were they put on separate buses, they didn't,
Sorry.
They didn't tell us where they were taking Layla. Her mom and her ended up on 2 different locations, and we didn't know where she was. Luckily, and then when my partner was released, she said, "Where's the kids?" And they wouldn't tell her. They said they didn't know. They were rude as hell, and it's shocking. Not oh, they dropped him at this location, or oh, I'll get on the radio and find out. Just I don't know. Don't care. And luckily, one of the kids, and it wasn't just our daughter, had a phone that had a little bit of juice on it, and she was able to get part of a message out. And so we had 2 people out driving around the West Bank trying to find the kids, which is a kind of gut-wrenching experience. I'm down on the highway still trying to figure out what's going on. Brother, mom, and another friend are out there trying to find her, and eventually did. But I think the idea that you're separating families, the Democrats, like supposedly that's the one of your winning issues. You don't separate families. And that's exactly what they did last night. And moreover, I think there's nothing more irresponsible than taking a child out of the custody of their parents, dropping them on the side of the road in an unfamiliar neighborhood at 10 o'clock at night. I can't even imagine. Luckily the kids, the young people, had a little time to get themselves organized on that bus. My daughter is, her parents are organizers, so she had a good head on her shoulders. She wasn't the only one. They worked together to keep each other safe, but it wasn't for anything the police did last night.
Well, and individuals were exercising their First Amendment right to peacefully protest. So, in your opinion, do you think that the arrests and the citations that were issued, do you feel like that those were done legally?
It's absolutely not legally done. First of all, and people said that today. They have a responsibility to order a dispersal and give people a path to exit. On the contrary, the police didn't try to stop us from getting on the highway. It's not that big to block an on-ramp. We go on the highway and then there they are. They surrounded us immediately. It was their decision how to handle that, and their decision was to close both directions of the highway for 5+ hours. Moreover, aside from not handling us sort of by the book last night, we have been out here marching every week, day after day, at least since George Floyd was killed. Some of us have been doing it for a bit longer. But we've been on a lot of highways this summer. And this is a new tactic, and they sprung it on us with, again, no option to disperse. No warning that if we went on the freeway that was going to happen. It would have been that hard to station a little guy at the top and be like, oh, don't do it. No, they absolutely made a decision to, bring the iron fist out last night. And, I would have thought they'd be trying to protect their election because it seemed like their political opponents trying to steal it. And just to be clear, it was the police that were doing it. It was multiple agencies. But it was the political leadership that ordered it. The political leadership that said we're going to cover all the overtime, you can bring out all the extra guns, and you can even spend a few days getting yourselves organized. Like when you do have a multiple agency response like that, that's coordinated at the top level. That's why we're out here at the governor's office tonight.
Anything else you want to say?
No, I'm good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for your time.
That's right.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being there.
My name's Jessica.
So we're getting ready to wrap things up here. We are here at the governor's mansion in Minnesota where a press conference just wrapped up. Individuals, organizations gathered here today to talk about dropping charges. As you can see here, these signs, drop the charges. Organizations wanted to call out what they felt like was the illegal citations that were issued yesterday after nearly 1,000 people took to Interstate 94 to peacefully protest. And so community gathered here today asking to drop the charges. And so we will continue to follow this story and find out whether or not Governor Walz takes heed. Several people asked for Governor Walz to issue a formal apology for what took place yesterday in Minneapolis. And so we'll continue to follow this. You can find all of the coverage from last night on our website, unicornriot.ninja. A huge shout out to our reporter Nico, who was actually out there for 6.5 hours on the freeway. Huge shout out to him for being out here today and being on camera, and Chris, who's been working core. My name is Georgia Ford. If you like our coverage, please continue to support us. We are only here and able to do what we do by your donations. And so you can donate on our website, unicornriot.ninja. You can also sign up for monthly payments on Patreon and more. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Signing off in St. Paul, Minnesota.